Welcome everybody to the Veritas Prep Advisor webinar today. Great to have you all here. Going to give people a chance to get in the room. As I've put up there, if you're having any problems hearing or seeing me, go ahead and log out and back in again. But I'd love a quick hello from you guys as people are coming in, just to make sure you can hear and see me okay. Got quite a nice turnout here, and looking forward to spending the next hour with you, sharing some of my knowledge on the GMAT and some Veritas Prep strategies. But go ahead, and so you get used to the format a little bit, quick hello from some of you. I'd love to hear where you're coming in from. If you want to put that in on the chat there, just so you get used to using it. One great thing about this format is it's incredibly interactive and participatory. So would love to hear from you guys. So you can write in on the chat if you want to let me know where you're coming in from. Hey Des, how you doing? Great, thank you. Heading over actually to Norway in 2 weeks to teach a class there at the Business School BI in Oslo. I've done that the last 3 years, so looking forward to a couple weeks in Europe. Myself, I'm sure most of you are from Europe there, as Prep Advisor is a European website. So, but again, great to have you guys here. What are we going to do today? We're going to spend a little time. Hey, Victoria, great to hear from you all. And spend some time today helping you with your preparation. So whether you choose to go with a prep course or you prepare on your own, spending some time helping you understand better what the GMAT is designed to assess, how to prepare for this type of test. When I work, I've been teaching the GMAT for over 10 years now, and working with students when they prepare on their own, their biggest mistake is they don't understand what the GMAT is designed to assess. They don't understand how to prepare for this type of test because it's so unique. And so we really want to help you with that today. We're going to do a few example questions to highlight the importance of understanding this. And great. I love you guys. Keep chiming in. Love to hear from you there. So thanks for that. And my assumption with this lesson is that most of you have some familiarity with the GMAT, and you've done a little bit of preparation on your own. If you haven't, that's fine. But assumption is you've done some work on your own. You're in the process of preparation for the GMAT, and so. Today again, these two things mainly: understanding what it's designed to assess, and then how do you unlock that type of difficulty. So I'd like to get right into it so we can make the most use of the hour that we have, and I might keep you a little late for those interested. Yeah, Anna, as I said, if there's any problems there, log in and out. There should be sound, should be fine. And so if any of you can't hear, go ahead. One of you could type up in the chat for me just to log out and back in again. That would be great. So any of you having, if one of you just wants to put up there for Anna or Andras there to let them know to just log out. Yeah, a little bit of a lag. It depends on the quality, Crowley, of your internet connection with this. And when we teach the classes, people get pretty comfortable with it, but shouldn't be a problem with the sound. So. And let's go ahead and like to hear from you. Can most of you hear me okay? Yeah, can most of you hear me okay? Go ahead and, again, 5 minutes here just to get started. Can most of you hear me okay? Yeah. And so if any of you are having problems, yeah, great. Log out and back in again, that's great. So thanks you guys, and let's get started. I want to get you guys involved here and get right into it. And again, if you're having any problems, go ahead and log out and back in again. And yeah, if any of you, one of you, Ileana, if you just post that up for me, just so I don't have to type it there. I had it up in the beginning, but with everyone saying hello, just let people know to log out and back in again. Would be great if one of you would mind putting that up there. What I had originally is if anyone's having problems with the video or sound to do that. So I want to get you guys involved here. Yeah, thank you so much, Tug. That's great. I really appreciate that. That's awesome, Tug. The old copy and paste works pretty well, so thanks so much. Let's get into this. I want to hear from you guys now, get you involved right away. What do you think the GMAT is designed to assess? And what's the goal of the test? You can answer those simultaneously. So I'd like to hear from you guys. In your perspective, what do you think the GMAT is designed to assess? What is this test designed for? more, and you can get pretty specific on it. What's the goal of the GMAT? So I'd love to hear from any of you. What is the goal of this test? Because people really misunderstand the potential. Absolutely, Magda. Analytical potential. Your ability to analyze, solve problems. Sure, absolutely. What else? Let's hear from people. Sure. Any of you guys? Logic. Absolutely. You know, your ability to reason logically. Absolutely, Anna. Organization, sure, to some degree, Bruna, yeah, to some degree, yeah, how well you're studied, but again, Elder, that's so right, but you know, what's important here is this is not like other tests, decision making. I'd say, Victoria, of all the ones so far, that's the most important, that's the most accurate. It tests your ability to make good decisions, to problem solve, but also, Marin, to work under stress. You're absolutely right. When people struggle with this test, often it's because of the stress, but that is important in business. You're absolutely right. But I'd love to hear a couple other things here, because you've gotten a lot of the important things down, but there's a few other things there. Aptitude, time constraint, time management, sure. Absolutely. But really it's designed first to predict your performance at business school. That's number one. That's why this test exists. And its goal is to correlate with your performance in business school. And so if you look here on the next slide, you know, predict student success in business school, allowing schools to accept those most likely to be successful. That's the whole, I mean, that's part of it, Bruna, it is. But in terms of the test itself, you know, if you talk to the test makers, it's designed to measure higher order thinking, right? Reasoning skills, problem solving skills, and to some degree the general quality of your education. But one thing that I want to make sure you're clear, and this is a huge mistake on this, and so this is an entrance exam, not an exit exam. This is not a let's regurgitate what we've learned. It's what it is, the goal on this is certainly to assess your potential, your potential to be a good problem solver, to do well in business. And so content matters on a test like this, but the goal is not to assess content. The goal is not who's good at grammar, who's good at math. That's not why this test exists. And if it was the reason, it wouldn't be very good at predicting your aptitude in business school, because those things are only partially important in your performance. So if you think about the way we've designed our whole curriculum at Veritas, it's very important to understand this, is around this pyramid called Bloom's taxonomy of educational objectives. And so for any of you who've studied a little bit with education, you know, you've seen this before, and they have many more layers on it, but the bottom of the pyramid is really knowledge, right? It's your ability to remember things, understand things. When people prepare for the GMAT, what they do is they spend all of their time on the bottom of the pyramid, and what they don't do is learn how to apply information, right, and then also how to think like the test maker. And that's what we want to focus on today. The higher end of the pyramid. People don't do well on the GMAT mainly because they just memorize and regurgitate things, and they don't realize that, of course, content matters, but the goal of the test is use content to test problem-solving skills and higher-order thinking. And so while you need to know the material, for instance, if you don't know exponent rules, you're not going to do well on any question involving exponents. You're going to get them wrong. But once you know the exponent rules, that only takes you to the 50th percentile. It doesn't take you beyond that. And understand that the competitive nature of this test, the standard is very high. So you do need to understand, right? You do need to understand very well the underlying material, but you really need to learn how to apply that knowledge, and that's where the difficulty lies in the GMAT. So in your preparation, if you do it on your own, make sure you're solid at the bottom of the pyramid. And what we do in our curriculum is break it out into skill builders. For each lesson, we have all of these things that you can do at home for building your underlying algebra skills, arithmetic skills, etc. And then in class and in the lessons, we focus more on the upper two tiers of the pyramid, applying knowledge, skills meet strategy, and this idea of think like the test maker. So, you know, keep this in mind in your preparation. Don't just focus on the bottom of the pyramid, and that's where people really struggle. So I want to get you guys involved again. What particular abilities and behaviors are associated with higher order thinking? And so let's hear from people here. if you go Google higher order thinking and read about it, pretty interesting. What is associated with higher order thinking? I'd love to hear from you. What are the types of things they're assessing with harder questions on the GMAT? What are the different things that they're focusing on? So let's hear from people. Sorry if a few of you are having problems. That can happen with a bad internet connection with this. Not much I can do about that, unfortunately. But let's hear from you, get you guys back involved here, is what particular abilities and behaviors are associated with higher order thinking? Let's hear from any of you guys. Think about what types of behaviors and abilities are associated with higher. Absolutely, Bruna. As much as I hate that expression, right? It's spot on, right? It's think out of the box, think differently, think creatively. Absolutely, that's right. And so that's one thing. But keep going. Fast reasoning, info linking. Absolutely, Magda. That's absolutely correct. Keep going. What are a few other things? Think about. What differentiates, when they get above the 60th percentile in this test, what are they doing to differentiate between people? Strategic thinking, absolutely. Yeah, leadership, but that's a little bit hard to assess in a test, but certainly matters. But strategic thinking, big time, yeah. Anyone else? Any other ideas here? Big one that you're missing here, which is a little bit, Bruna, you were on it pretty much, but prioritization, absolutely, Mary, yeah, that's important. Leveraging assets, leveraging hints. Really standardized tests to me are about your ability to go through and leverage hints in the test environment quickly. Critical thinking, Roman, absolutely. And so look on the next slide here, you see, what are they? If you go Google and read, yes, self-knowledge, absolutely, Magda, is very important. Like in this process, knowing what you're good at, what you're not, how to analyze a problem and use your resources to solve it. Absolutely, Magda, I like that a lot. So your ability to deal with abstraction, that's huge. I didn't hear you guys, many of you mention that, and that's big on the GMAT, your ability to deal with abstraction. How about your ability to play devil's advocate? That's the think outside the box. Think differently, because you have to differentiate yourself from other test takers, right? Your ability to find and recognize patterns. Pattern recognition is huge on these. And so also your ability to leverage assets and hints in a problem. So you guys were really moving nicely around all of these. This is what they're assessing on the GMAT, and so they're using this underlying information to do that. Absolutely, Bruna, that's right. That's a huge part, your ability, and that's this, like leveraging assets and hints, what matters and what doesn't. And so specifically, let's think about how do they do this, say, on the quantitative side in particular. So someone tell me in the chat, how do they take basic material like arithmetic and make it hard on a test like this? How do they take arithmetic and algebra and create questions that differentiate between very smart people, all of them college graduates looking to go to business school? Time pressure is one, Andre, absolutely, but how about in terms of making the question, Andre? You're absolutely correct. That's hugely important. That's your ability to prioritize. But how do they make arithmetic hard? That's a strange thing. If you want to think like the Testmaker, traps, Ileana, absolutely. And so you're going to see this stuff on the next slide. Andre, you guys really, this is great. Rephrasing, difficult wording, abstraction number one. You got it on multiple levels, Andres. That's exactly right. Keep going. You guys are great. This is everything. And this is what you have to learn how to recognize in the questions, or you're doomed to make the same mistakes over and over again. And so this is an excellent list that you guys are giving. All of you, the time pressure, the traps they've set, rephrasing, difficult wording, abstraction. So things like people learn concepts from A to B, right? Everyone learns how to do something from A to B, and how do they test it from B to A, what we call reverse engineering. So if you look here, what are these recurring themes to allow them to assess higher order thinking? And then we're going to look at examples of some of these. Is abstraction. That's huge, near the top. It really is. They take very simple concepts from arithmetic, algebra, geometry, but they make them incredibly abstract, and that differentiates between people who are good with higher order thinking and those who are not. They reverse engineer concepts. They use larger weird numbers. That's just a form of abstraction. misdirection. This is about the traps, moving you in the wrong direction. On any problem on the GMAT above, say, the 60th, 70th percentile, your first inclination is always wrong, right? What you would want to do first is wrong. You need to step back, digest the problem more slowly, and come up with the best approach. And so selling the wrong answer, hiding the right answer, that's part of the traps that Ileana was noting on there, exploiting common mistakes. And then there's content-specific themes. I think this is huge. And so we know precision in wording. If you were going to law school, taking the LSAT, this is huge, right? The precision in wording. But it's also very important on a test like the GMAT. And so realize that precision in wording to me is very big, and you're going to see that with some of these examples. So what I'd like to do now is, I wanted to present this stuff, but it's best demonstrated with examples. So I want to give you a few examples to really focus on how to prepare properly for a test like this. And so before I do that, I want to review, this idea that the underlying math is not very hard on the GMAT. I'm not saying the quantitative section isn't hard. It's one of the hardest sections on any test you're going to deal with. But the underlying math itself is rarely hard. I guarantee that everyone, it will, Narina, yes it will. It'll be recorded and available, absolutely. And so realize on this that the underlying math is rarely hard. So let's review. I'm sure everyone here, all 50 of you, can do division. I'm convinced that most of you can do division, but let's review it real quick. One thing I learned teaching in New York for so many years is there must be at least a dozen different ways to do long division around the world. And the US way looks like this, but whenever I do it with students from Europe or South America, they always give me a weird look like, what are you doing? But everyone understands the basics of division. Let's divide 25 by 8. Well, what do you get? You get 3 1/8. What do we call these numbers, right? The number being divided, that's the dividend. The number doing the dividing, that's the divisor. Of course, what do we call the number left over at the end? That's the remainder. Whenever you do a division, everyone knows that when you divide whole numbers like this, what's the result? The result is always the quotient, which is 3, plus the remainder over the divisor. So when you divide 25 by 8, I'm sure all of you in here realize you might be a little slow with it. Fluency is important on the GMAT, that this is 3 1/8. But also you should know that 1/8 is 0.125. These decimal equivalents for common fractions. One thing I like to note in this little intro here is fluency matters a lot for this test. You need to be fast with calculations, fluent with numbers. You might be very good at reasoning and higher order thinking, but if your fluency is weak, it's going to slow you down and it's going to cost you points at the end of the test from a speed perspective. So fluency matters, and that's part of your preparation time needs to be spent on that. But I think everyone understands this. This is 3 remainder 1, 3 1/8, 3.125. All of these really mean the same thing. And so that's division, division with whole numbers. Everybody knows how to do this. When I take this next question in a class of 30 in New York, of very smart people who often half the class goes on to score 700 or higher and go to some of the top business schools, it would always amaze me how few people would get this problem right. And I'm helping you, and then I'm presenting you with the material right here. But what I'd like to do is I'm going to go to the problem here. I'm going to step off and give you 2 minutes. I'll start the timer on this. And I'll take that poll right there and clear that out for you. Yeah, Magda, it's a good question. Let me interrupt because I think Magda's question is very important. It's by learning, by what we call, Magda, learning by doing a lot of problems. Because in each problem, what happens on the GMAT is the same numbers are used over and over again in problems. A lot of the 2-digit numbers, a lot of these important, like, common fractions. And so while you can separate it and do some drills, which I don't mind, and we do that in our books, that's part of the skill builders, you really gain it by doing a lot of problems, and you get more bang for your buck. You get to learn how to interpret the question, which is so hard, as you guys pointed out, deal with that abstraction. And then within every problem, there's some fluency that you have to exhibit, within that problem, and that's the best way because you get more bang for your buck. But if people are really weak, then often I have them do more drills separately up front. So I'm going to step off. Fun problem for you guys here. Go ahead and try this one I'll step off. I'm going to clear that poll out, give you a chance to answer it. I'll give you 2 minutes on this, and let's see how many of you can get it right. We'll discuss. It's a great one for showing how to deal with abstraction, and these arithmetic problems are often like that. So I'll step off, take 2 minutes, and I'll clear that poll and start the timer. So I'll broadcast those results for you so you can see, of 50 plus of you, only about a fifth of you were able to answer. You can see what people are picking on this. And what makes this hard? Let's hear from you guys, because there's a few interesting things on this. I love this problem. What makes it hard, first of all? I mean, obviously it's abstract, so we know that. Because you look at this, you've got variables. They're testing what we just put up on the slide right there, but it's very abstract. Can someone else tell me what's hard about this? And this isn't easy for people to come up with, but there's one thing on this in particular that makes it a hard problem. Anyone want to take a stab at that? There's one thing here that makes this problem very hard, and it's a very common vehicle used by test makers in difficult questions. The calculations, Ileana, are not bad on this. No, the calculations really aren't that bad if you set it up right, but that's what's hard. And so when you go through here, sorry, Brady, people coming in, it's hard to, sometimes there's problems with it, and we deal with that in the classes. We have a checklist, but it's hard to do in a concept. Yeah, Alberto, I like that. Yes, but you guys are missing, there's one thing in particular that makes this especially hard. But Alberto, that's really good. That's really good. Yeah, you can't back solve this, Anna. In other words, yeah, you're right. When you go through these, often this type of problem is back solvable, but because there's two variables involved in this, there's properties of the answer choices that have to be true, but if you understand that, you're going to get this problem right anyway. Here's the thing that makes this hard is they give you information that you don't need to solve it, but everyone tries to use it. This is resource management. This is true on almost every hard problem on this test. They give you information you don't need, but you try to use it. this number 65 doesn't matter. In other words, when you go through this, you are not trying to find the dividend here, m, you're trying to find n, but how many of you were trying to use the number 65? I bet if I could look at your work, if I could, stand over you guys and look at your work, I bet at least half of you were trying to do something with the number 65, if not more of you, because, you'd think you need to use it here, but you don't. Remember what we learned on the last one. The decimal portion, when you divide 25 by 8, the 0.125, the decimal portion, is always the remainder over the divisor. So in this problem, you know that this part, the 0.4, always corresponds with what? The remainder over the divisor. And look, they give you the remainder, it's 14. The divisor is what they want, n, and that equals 0.4. Back to your point there, Magda, about fluency, it's like, and doing calculations effectively, fractions are your friend, decimals are not. When you're doing work on paper without a calculator, you got to understand here that fractions are your friend. 0.4 is 2/5. 14 over n equals 2/5. And this is what I was saying, Ileana, on this one, that, cross multiplying 2n equals 70, what's n? It's 35. Versus what's 14 divided by 0.4, right? And going through, yeah, Alberto, that's great. I mean, but just this is what, when you prepare for this test, what we try to help you with is you've got to understand what they're doing. When they're standing in this room building questions, when they go from the 75th to the 80th, to the 80th to the 85th percentile, 85th percentile, the 90th percentile, what are they doing? They're not using harder content. They're creating more difficult problem solving, and they do things like, hey, if we put in 2 variables, make it so you can't back solve. We go through and we put in 65, which doesn't matter. People are going to try to use it. It's going to make it a hard question. And what is true for most good distractions, Magda, that's the misdirection, Magda, that I was talking about. You got it. Absolutely. And so, when you look at an example like this, you say, retrospectively, most people look at this and they say, why didn't I get this right? I mean, especially when I just went through with you, hey, what's the relationship? But it's harder than that. It's dealing with the abstraction. There's a lot going on. So, look, on arithmetic in particular, right, use simple parallel examples. If you're confused on this problem, just do a simple division like this to help remind you about these relationships. That's very powerful, using simple parallel examples to unlock the concept in a problem. When they give you things abstractly, get rid of the abstraction. Do it concretely with numbers, with things you do understand, and then the problem won't be all that hard. And so, any questions on this one? A nice example. And again, if you look in the official guidebook, this is very similar to one in about the middle of the problem-solving section, and it's one of my favorites for just looking at, hey, this is basic arithmetic, but the problem is not that easy, and I think most people can respect that. So, any questions on this example? Good. Let's move on and talk about data sufficiency. And so my assumption, and tell me if I'm wrong here, is that most of you have at least seen data sufficiency before. So I'm assuming that most of you have at least done a few data sufficiency problems. And what makes the quantitative section of this test so unique, data sufficiency? Because data sufficiency is very much about resource management, about making good decisions, and it's part math, part problem solving, part con game. I mean, in business, it's very important to spot the con, right? And so there's a lot of that embedded in data sufficiency in a very interesting way. So I want to use a simple example first, and tell me, you guys can do it with thumbs up or thumbs down or in the chat, yes or no. Have most of you done a data sufficiency question before? I mean, of the 50 of you guys, have most of you done a data sufficiency question before? Most of you, yeah, thumbs up. Yeah, it's good. So if you haven't, and I'll just take a look as you guys are punching those in there. If you haven't, the answer choices are fixed. You have 2 statements, and I've purposefully, we're going to do a few data sufficiency questions, and I've purposely given all what is the value questions because they're easier to understand, and that to prove sufficiency, this statement needs to give one exact value for x. So what I've done is just put one of the statements up here. I want someone to tell me, is this statement sufficient to answer this question? What is the value of x? Statement 1 says x is greater than 3, x is less than 5. What do people think? Is this sufficient to answer that question? Just, yeah, get a bunch of you. I like, it's helpful for me to see, and again, we're building up here. Well, Andre, depends. I like that. Meaning, which would then automatically mean what, Andre? I like your answer, right? Depends means it's not sufficient. Absolutely. Exactly, you guys. Yeah, you're getting there. And I mean, this is purposefully not super sophisticated. I'm putting it up there that if you think this is sufficient, you have done what? You have assumed that x is an integer. This is infinitely insufficient in that there are an infinite number of values between what? Between 3 and 5. So this is infinitely insufficient. And when this is standing here like this, if you've never done this before, I could see how you would make that assumption. But you see, so much of data sufficiency, like in critical reasoning, is about assumptions. You've got to avoid assumptions to get these problems right. So is this statement, sufficient to answer this question? No, it's not. It's infinitely insufficient. But actually what we're going to show you is this idea of statements as hints. Let's say, for those of you who thought this was sufficient and made that mistake, right? Look here. What if you're then told that x is an integer? I don't think then it's very hard. In other words, if you thought this was sufficient at first and you made that mistake and you were about to pick A or D, I forgive you. But as soon as they tell you x is an integer, they are screaming at you the assumption that you were making back with this example. And so the answer on this would be what? Just to get you confident with what we call the decision tree, given this problem now, 3 is less than x is less than 5, meaning x is between them, and statement 2 says x is an integer. Well, this is clearly not sufficient by itself. So what would the answer be on this? Just to get you familiar again, which I'm sure most of you are already. And again, I can't do a full data sufficiency lesson with you certainly in an hour, but the two together. If you know this is true and you know this is true, guess what? Then I'm sure that x is what x is for. So what they're doing is, you see how this is resource management? And this is as basic an example as you can get. But let's just ramp it up a tiniest bit. Again, still not all that hard, but to make a point. If x represents the number of children on a school bus, what is the value of x? Well, what's the answer now to this problem? Same two statements. What's the answer now to this question? And so before it was C, what if we go through here and we say x represents the number of children on a school bus? You go through this and you say, can you have fractional children? No, not in a normal school environment. And so you go through here and you say, I don't need to know this. They've already given me this information in the question stem, a fairly common ploy. They give you something as one statement, exactly, that you already know from the question stem itself, and you need to leverage that asset properly. So you need to leverage that children have to be positive, or if there's none, 0 whole numbers with a bus. So the answer then would be A. The point is resource management. They are so clever at hiding the most important information in the question stem itself, because our natural inclination is to focus on what? Focus on the statements, not so much the question. So someone tell me, just to give another example, what if you're told in the question, not relating to this example, what if you're told in the question that x is a non-negative integer? Someone tell me what number will surely matter. In other words, if you're told that x is a non-negative integer, what number will surely matter? Exactly, Elner. Everyone stop for a second. Elner preaching one of my most important mantras. Don't jump to answers. I mean, what Elner has written up there is, to me, one of the most important things in preparation for this test. Elner, absolutely, good for you. That's spot on. And you, as you guys are saying, if you're told that x is a non-negative integer, you should ask, why didn't they just say positive? Because somehow 0 is going to matter. Absolutely. So you got to be smart. So much of data sufficiency is you got to squeeze everything you can, all the information out of a statement, a piece of the question stem. Who's good at leveraging assets? But of course, what else happens? People over leverage assets. They think they have more than they do. And I'd like to use this great example here on this board, and then the one that follows, to talk about this idea of the 2 wrong answers. So you can see if you think you have enough information but you don't. Right, you've made assumptions. That would be like thinking that first statement was sufficient in the first example. You assume that it was an integer. You're over leveraging what you've got. In other words, you think you've got more than you do. And what's the other mistake? You think you don't have enough information, but you actually do. Right, you're not leveraging what you're given enough. And so in data sufficiency, these are the only 2 wrong answers. Of course, there's different ways they build them in constructs with those 5 answer choices, but essentially every time it's, are you properly assessing information? That's the name of the game in data sufficiency. And so you could see how important this is. And I love this example, both for that, but also this idea of statements as hints. Who's good at leveraging hints? So this is pretty tricky. I've kind of led you just to keep the problem moving here. And so I've only given you one statement here. And I want you to take a second here. And I want you to decide if this statement is sufficient or not. And so the question is, how many integers x exists such that a is less than x is less than b? So how many integers exist such that this condition is met? Statement 1 tells you that b minus a equals 7. And so how might you assess that? Well, you could consider some numbers like, okay, 9 minus 2 equals 7. And so how many integers, that's what they're asking, are between 9 and 2? 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Sometimes on this problem, people get confused and they think, well, what would happen if you moved through 0? Would that change somehow the number of integers? So I gave an example for that. 4 minus 3, well, that equals 7, right? And still there are 6 integers between. So I don't want anyone to give a hint away on this if you think you know, but I'd just like you to say in the chat and take a second here and tell me, is this sufficient, yes or no, to answer that question? And I don't want any hints given, I just want yes or no's in the chat. What do you think? Is this sufficient to answer that question? And this is one of my favorite examples that I have seen for teaching this. And you know, it's, again, if you gave me this, if I knew nothing about the GMAT and you walked up to me with this problem, I don't know what I would say. I don't know what I would say. And so when you go through this, Andre, Masoud, you're saying no. Mariana, Tung, yes. Philippe, you think no. And anyone else, I mean, go through this. You want to think about it a lot. But of course, what's the secret on this? You've got to try to play devil's advocate. It sure seems like there are 6 integers between them. It sure does. I mean, they tell you on this that how many integers x exists. So someone tell me then, if you think it's not, why not? So why is this not sufficient then? I mean, Philippe or Andre, why is this not sufficient? Give me a reason. I want someone to give me a reason why it's not sufficient. And again, this is just with the one statement. Yeah, find it. No, Andre, exactly, Andre. But what's the counter example? No, not true. Andre, yeah, Alberto being sharp about the precision. And so stop right there. Let everyone stop for a second. Alberto, I'll probably butcher your name, Abdelhamid, so I'll do my best there, sorry. No, Andre, listen, one thing when I teach these, Andre, that I talk so much about is we want you to make mistakes. I mean, this is what our whole curriculum is designed for, you to make mistakes so you don't do them on test day, right? And so when you go through this, Andre, realize on this that, sorry, Dan, don't know what to tell you there. So, Andre, say, absolutely. I mean, making mistakes is fine. But Alberto, what you guys are saying, absolutely correct. But why is that hard, Alberto? Why would you assume that A and B are integers on these? That doesn't matter, Philippe. The negative doesn't matter on this. If you're 7 apart, I just gave a few examples. Positive and negative doesn't matter on this. No, you're going to get, Masoud, you're going to get the same answer. You're going to get the same answer if you do that, right? -4, -5, -6, -7, -8, -9. You're going to get the same answer. Still 6 integers. Someone tell me on this, what makes this so hard though? I mean, Alberto, that's pretty solid that you came up with that. Well, yes, Elder, that's part of it, but more so is this. I mean, I think they've polluted your mind right here. How many integers x, so you assume that everything has to be an integer? I mean, think about what they've done in this problem. By putting integers x here and by using 7, it's so much harder to play devil's advocate. In my opinion, it is very hard, as Alberto said, or Andre, I forget which one of you, to find the counterexample by the way they've set it up. But remember, in data sufficiency, do they ever give you just one statement? No. I think this is quite hard. I congratulate you if you were able to play devil's advocate, find the counterexample on your own. But I want all of you to tell me, would it be hard as a full problem? I don't think so. I think that's 75th percentile before. I think when they give this second statement, if you're good at data sufficiency, it goes below the 50th percentile. Because let's say you were going to make that mistake and you thought, oh, there's got to be 6 integers between there. And you go to this example, but then A and B are integers. See what they're doing with this second statement? They are beating you on the head, screaming in your ear, don't assume that they're integers. Because why would they be telling you this? This is an enormous hint. And so what we teach you is anytime in data sufficiency you're given one statement that's clearly insufficient by itself, which this one is, you need to wonder why it might matter back with statement 1. And the reason it matters is because, well, what if it's a decimal? Why can't this be 9.2 minus 2.2? That also equals 7, and then there are 7 integers between, not 6. So this one, first one proves it's 6 or 7. Second one, A and B are integers, that locks it into this example. And again, you might, yeah, exactly. Well, no, Elder, this is going to be, you're clearly getting the game here, Elder, with your comments and the way you're thinking about this. But they play it both ways, Elder. They tempt you with things that you don't need here, and that's even harder. This one actually is sufficient. Most people think you do need it. Yes, Bruna, absolutely. That's superb. That's superb. I mean, you guys are getting it. We call this why are you here and why are you here temptation. In other words, here you really do need it, but they play it where it's not needed, but you think you do need it. You always need to do the work and find the example, but the point is, I think you can all agree that this question really isn't that hard once this second statement is here, but you have to be good at leveraging hints, especially when it's given to you so clearly as in this example. So pretty nice example. Again, focusing more on playing devil's advocate. The better you can do on your own with this, the more I like that. You know, the more I like that. And so, why is showing unsupported content? Oh, sorry, Liana. Yeah, you probably have to log out and back in again with the settings on this. It can be tricky sometimes, and it's hard for these webinars in the classroom environment. We can walk through with you for the 6 weeks to figure it out. But let's move on. I want to do one more data sufficiency, then we're going to do a couple sentence correction, wrap it up. This is one of my favorite data sufficiency questions, and one of the reasons we do this is to point out that it's not so much about math, a lot of these questions. It's about the con game and the construct, how they built the problem. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes on this. I'll step off, clear the poll, and open it up for you guys. And then I want you to answer this question, see what you come up with, and then we'll discuss. So I'll show you the results here. You can put them in the poll or put them up there, and I'll just hit broadcast. And so one thing about this question is your answers are mimicking exactly the data that we collect. We have this huge question bank, and we collect data on all of our questions, both from our practice tests and just underlying book questions. And so what's the sucker choice on this? The sucker choice on this is C, right? The sucker choice on this is C. They want you to pick C, and you can see 15 of you have picked C, 6 have gotten it right. And this mirrors, I mean, now we have like 2,500 responses on this question. This is right after we put it in. But this whole question is designed for you to pick C. And how is it designed that way? Well, here's what they've done. When you go through this, another sucker choice on this is E. When you read this, it doesn't say, did one sell exactly 3 shirts? This is precision in wording. It said at least 3 shirts. And so 4 workers from an international charity were selling shirts at a local thrift shop. If together they sold 8 shirts, they have purposefully given you a statement here that most people will realize is not sufficient. The reason this is not sufficient is because everyone realizes, wait a second, you go through, you go 2, 2, 2, and 2. Alberto, isn't it fun? When you realize your mistake on this, you're like, I can't believe I fell for this, but it's hard, it's tricky, it's a con game. What they do on this question is they know you'll come up with this counterexample. You'll be like, oh, no, this is not sufficient, because what if they all sold 2? Then someone did not sell at least 3 shirts, but it would be easy to get someone to sell 3 shirts, so you can get both a yes, and a no on this question. This is a yes or no question. And so you go through and it's not sufficient. But when you go down here, what have they given you? They've given you the thing that's fixing the problem with this one. So most people gobble this up and they go back up here and they say, oh, as long as it's not this example and I take both of these together, then I know someone sold at least 3 shirts. But this one is sneaky sufficient all by itself. This second statement is, Alberto, as you just realized, look, when you go through it, what's the minimum case? The minimum case, just taking this one alone, if no 2 workers sold the same number of shirts, then the minimum case is 0, 1, 2, and 3. And in that case, did someone sell at least 3 shirts? Absolutely. Maybe it's not this. Maybe it's 0, 5, 10, and 20. But I'll tell you what, someone sold at least 3 shirts. I challenge you to take statement 2 by itself and come up with a case when someone did not sell at least 3 shirts. But you see the data, you saw what most people picked here. This isn't a math question, right? This is a con game. They've set you up here. They know you're going to take this, find the problem, this fixes the problem, they know you'll pick C. But what we focus on with you in these classes is this idea of the reward system. Is, what's the reward in C here? Most people are seeing that. So what you always have to do on a problem like this, correct answer on this is B, this statement is sufficient by itself. What you have to realize is, if you're going to pick, let's say, Alberto, I don't know if you did or not, but let's say you did pick C on this problem. What we teach you is, if you're going to pick C on this, you need to make damn sure it's not A or B or it's not E. Here I can eliminate E. I know that I can do it with both of them, but did you go back and carefully analyze each one on this? Did you go back and say, well, I know I can't do it from the first one, so it can't be A. See, most people never check. They never check to see if that second one is sufficient by itself. And it cleverly is, as you realize, Alberto, it's a great problem. I mean, they've used this construct over and over again. Different math is used, different presentations, and the setup is this. They give you something with the problem. The second statement fixes that problem, but the second one is actually going through there. Elder, no, you're still making the mistake, Elder. This is such a good problem that you're going through and you're still making the mistake, Elder, and you'll you'll realize it and laugh once you do that is, look, no two workers sold the same number of shirts. I'm not assuming that every worker actually sold at least a shirt. When you go through this, it tells you no two workers, 4 workers were selling shirts, and no two workers sold the same number of shirts. 2 can't be, you can't have 2 at 0, Elner. It means the minimum case is 0, 1, 2, and 3, someone sold at least 3 shirts. If you can come up with me and give me 4 numbers where one of them is not at least 3, then I'll change the problem. It's very clever, exactly, because they're different is straight. That's right. But the point of this is a critical reasoning kind of problem-solving exercise. It has nothing to do with math. The math is not hard on this. This is a thought process exercise. Is going through this. Absolutely, Alberta, the 4 workers. I mean, and the at least 3. A lot of people read this as exactly 3. If it's exactly 3, the answer is E. We don't know if someone sold exactly 3, but someone had to sell at least 3 shirts. So, pretty clever problem. Let's leave that. It's a great one for this idea of construct thinking. As you prepare, you've got to realize there's not that many ways they can set these problems up, and you get very good at noticing them, but this drives everything. If you're going to pick C, you better make sure you can't do it from each one alone, right? And also on this, you've got to go down and say, okay, let's make sure I can actually do it with both of them, going through and carefully assessing them. And so, yeah, it could be note-taking, Bruna, but it's also, okay, so you could keep track of it mentally, however you know, that's more of a personal preference, but yes, essential that you keep track. So math knowledge is important, but reasoning as well. This is a quantitative reasoning test, not a math test. I mean, I just worked with a student for a long time who just refused to treat it as a quantitative reasoning test, wanted to just make it a math test every time. Got a good quant score, but you can't get above, say, the 75th percentile without also good reasoning skills. And so, you know, we've shown you a couple: play devil's advocate, leverage assets, use simple parallel examples, think like the test maker, understand how they create difficulty. I want to take a second and also show you this on the verbal side, and then we'll wrap it up. I might keep you a little late. Feel free to go if you have to, but a couple things at the end, both some offers from us and some thank yous and resources from Prep Advisor as well. So when you go through, is this sentence correct? In grammar, in sentence correction, I think it's the most misunderstood of the question types on the GMAT. In other words, people don't prepare for this the right way. They think it's a grammar test. If they're trying to assess who's going to do well in business school, you need good writing skills, but you don't need obscure grammar knowledge to do well. And people spend way too much time memorizing grammar rules instead of learning how to play the game. So this would be very hard if this was the way the game was, but a lot of people treat it like this. You know, they go through Anna's fast on this one. She's going in saying not correct. But if you don't have choices, answer choices, or hints, you could go crazy going through it. Anna, tell me on this, why not? Then you think it's not correct. But let's see if you could tell me for the right reason why it's not correct. So, I mean, this is very hard, to do on your own. So why is it not correct? Someone go through, if you think it's not correct, why? But you could see you would spend all of this time trying to analyze this sentence, having no idea. Yeah, exactly. Anna, that's right. I mean, this is called, right, when you go through this, faulty predication. It's like, although the term psychopath is applied to someone, it is someone? Well, it is referring back to the term. Can a term be a person? I mean, you said it perfectly, all of you guys. But, you know, that's pretty hard to notice. Like, unless you're good with grammar, Anna, Alberto. You guys, that's fast noticing that. But again, this is quite hard on its own. It's a lot like that example we just did with the B minus A equals 7. I think this is pretty hard on your own, and you need pretty high-end grammar skills to notice that. Also, on the last one, you needed to be really good at playing devil's advocate on your own. But what about the choice? This is from an official problem in the official guide. What about if this is your choice? Because you guys know how sentence correction works. You don't have to read a sentence and decide if it's right or wrong. Look at this one and say, if you had to choose between these two, is that hard? I mean, Anna, you did it all on your own very quickly. You were up there after I'd had that sentence up in about 10 seconds. But to me, that's pretty hard. Now it's dead easy. Look at the choice. The choice is, it is someone, this is what you have to choose between, or it refers to someone. I mean, talk about a hint right here. If you thought this was okay, it refers to someone who is, in this what we call decision point, they're giving it away. In the differences in that answer choice, when they say it refers, again, that's someone knocking you on the head, telling you what's wrong with this example. And without it, it's pretty hard to come up with it on your own. You've got to leverage the hints. So much of sentence correction is who's good at leveraging the hints that are given to you with the differences in the answer choices, what we call decision points. Obviously, like on the quantitative side, you need a base of grammar knowledge, but it's not as deep as people think if you play the game the right way. And so, this choice here, I think you could all agree, pretty easy once you get this because it's giving it away. Let's do a problem and see if you can leverage decision points well. And it's a pretty tricky one. And it also shows you how they make them hard. In almost every hard sentence correction problem, there's something in the correct answer that you don't like. A weird structure, something weird that you're not comfortable with, but the other four are dead wrong. Sentence correction is always pure process of elimination. That's how you play the game, finding the errors, not which one do I like. You won't do well if you do that. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes on this. Take a second. You can do it in probably less than that. Then we'll discuss, do one more if we have time, and wrap it up. So go ahead and do this example here and put it into the poll, and then we'll discuss. Interestingly on this, as I show you the results, the more time that you guys took on this problem, as you can see, then you started to do pretty well on this. Elner, exactly. Everyone knows what Elner is saying up there is that, see, Alberto, you were way too quick on this. It was great. Alberto, you were too fast. You answered this in 20 seconds and you got it wrong. And then you just sat off to the side and said, I got it, right? But the thing is it's clever, because here's what you did, Alberto Shirley. You said, so dense and convoluted as to pose. I hate the way that sounds to my ear. That does not sound correct. But that's not a concrete decision point, a concrete error. And so I've got to notice, wait a second, why are they giving me this choice of tense here? That's a hint. That's the hint, exactly, Victoria. That's a huge hint right here. Yes, they're also giving me a choice between idioms. And one thing you've got to learn, None of you, myself included, we are not qualified to assess whether an idiom is correct or not, right? It's even the best editors at the New York Times don't know all idioms and whether they're correct or not. So what they've done here, just so you understand this, Alberto, and they tricked you a little on this one, is they put a weird idiom in the correct answer that most people are not familiar with and not comfortable with and don't like the way it sounds. But you don't need to have memorized that idiom to get it right. The idiom people want is, the one we're so accustomed to is, so dense and convoluted that they, but this is wrong. I mean, when you go through and look at this, you know, there's, by the way, you guys were a little bit better on this. And so, but you can see on this, not so much, again, Bruno, that's not wordy is not a concrete reason to eliminate, right? And so when you go through this, you got to find those concrete decision points, and we'll look at the next page to see that. But so dense and convoluted that they pose, look, especially because of this, who study his works, they're characterized by sentences so dense and convoluted that they posed in the past a hurdle for people reading them right now. That makes no sense. That's no good. It's wrong, as Victoria said correctly. Mind the time. This is in a logical timeline, as we call it. That's wrong. So these are all wrong. This meaning is completely wrong. It's not dense and convoluted enough, plus as they pose is very strange. But again, that's an idiomatic choice. But they're not just dense and convoluted enough. They're so dense and convoluted as to pose. This is the only one that gets the meaning correct and the timelines correct, and is thus A. But this is a pretty tricky problem. I mean, look back. And again, this is a long time ago. 2,000 responses. Now it's probably up to 4. Right? 1,100 people picking C to 700 getting it right. This is a pretty hard problem, right? You can see that. And you're set up to pick C on this problem, but it's not. It's A. And the key on this is, first, understand how they make them hard. Every single sentence correction problem that is difficult has something in the correct answer that you're not comfortable with. But it's just because you haven't seen it before, you don't know it. But the other 4 are concretely wrong. But if you focus on false decision points, like, in other words, when you go back, obviously these are both correct if this says that they pose. If this says that they pose, they can't give you both of those. They're both right. But again, that's tricky. That's how they make them hard. Who's good at leveraging the right information to make decisions? Core competencies, a lot of core competencies tested in sentence correction. Who's good at making decisions with what they do know and letting other things that they don't know go and finding the concrete points that they do understand? A lot of kind of hierarchy of knowledge tested in these sentence correction problems. So really nice example, tricky one for sure. And so just as a review of that, this idea of decision points, where do you look? Obviously the first and last words of the answer choices, they're almost always different. You can note them quickly. What are easy decision points? Anything subject-verb agreement, pronoun agreement, verb issues tend to be easier. Modifiers, if you understand how to use them. But my experience working with students is they don't understand modifiers well, so they're not ever able to leverage that information effectively, and that's where knowledge is important. Look, you know, one thing, and just skipping ahead, I'm going to skip over just this one other problem in here, but let's go and wrap it up here for, we're over the hour a little bit. But what I really want to summarize with you is, you know, this is a reasoning test, and skills are important. If you don't know the core grammar rules, you can't do well at sentence correction. No matter how good you are at decision points and leveraging information, slash and burn, getting rid of garbage in a sentence, you need to know things, obviously. That's the bottom of the pyramid. But that doesn't even take you much beyond the 50th percentile in this test. So know it, but then you've got to see clues and know which tools to use. This is pattern recognition, doing a lot of problems, and then also you know, learning what to do in certain cases, and that's essential. And then the think like the Testmaker, sniff out the trap answers, understand the reward system. remember, this is a hard test. If you're scoring in the 80th or 90th percentile, that's showing that you are better than 80% of the people taking this test who are all college graduates and smart people. It's going to be hard to differentiate. There's got to be a reward for that correct answer, and if there's not, you should step back and dig deeper into the problem. That's huge. And so hopefully what we've done today gives you a taste of that. Look, if you prepare on your own, make sure you get the right takeaways from each question. Why is the correct answer correct? Why is the incorrect one incorrect? Why is it tempting? And this to me is huge. This is one of my favorite quotes. Don't mistake activity for achievement. If you do 1,000 problems for this test, but you don't get the right takeaways, you're not going to get better. You're just going to be regurgitating your mistakes. And make sure you're getting the right takeaways. And so, look, if you're interested in one of our courses, I'd love to have you join one of my live online courses. You can do an in-person course or just the on-demand. My colleague Brian Galvin, who I worked on our curriculum with and who runs all the academic programs at Veritas, he did an amazing job putting together this on-demand package that you can get, and you get $100 off for joining this. There's the offer code for it, or you can mention this webinar when you call. And one important thing here is, pretty good, Magda. Look, I just worked with it. I've been working with these practice tests since we made them. They're using almost the exact same algorithm, and they're very accurate, and I find them to be within 20, 30 points of what you get. You can never exactly match their test because it's a proprietary algorithm, but pretty good. But let me just wrap this up, and then I'll stick around for some questions, Magda, and just give me a second. First thing, big thank you for Prep Advisor for hosting this, for all of the resources they provide for you at their website, articles, right, the videos on there, the expert forum. If you have more that you'd like to discuss with what we've gotten into today, you can certainly do that at their forum. You can go to their main website or go right to this link where experts are there to answer any further questions. But a big thank you from us at Veritas and from everyone to Prep Advisor for hosting this. And if you want more information on our courses, you can go here. If you're interested in joining me for one of these live online courses, really incredible format. You got a taste of it. But we've really put a lot of resources into this new online format. It's very interactive. Love it. Thank you, Ileana, for doing that. It really, it'll be up. I think we'll get it up pretty quickly. I'm going to upload it. It takes a little time, certainly by tomorrow, should be available. So sorry if you had any tech problems. That's hard to sort through in a quick webinar like this, and it happens for some of you. It always does. So, but as I was saying, I'd love to have you join one of my courses. I'm starting a couple new ones later in January, and 3 of my colleagues, David Newland, Ethan, and Ravi, are all teaching these live online courses. Some of our best instructors in this format, and they're starting some courses earlier in January. So we'd love to have you guys. Look, a great crew. I love the feedback you guys were giving in the chat. You can see how interactive it is, and really appreciate all your participation. That's why I love this online format so much. It's so interactive. But thank you guys so much, and hope you found it useful. And Ileana, you can post all your questions there, absolutely. And thank you guys so much. And any questions, go ahead and go to the forum there, and hope to see you in one of my classes. And again, thank you to Prep Advisor for what they've done. So take care and have a great day, and hope to see you in one of the classes.